the plight of Quynh Bdap and the Dega indigenous Montagnards, a call for Thai compassion and international law. The narrative of the Montagnard Dega people, indigenous inhabitants of the Central Highlands of Vietnam, is a mosaic of cultural richness overshadowed by a history of oppression and struggle. At the heart of this struggle is the emblematic figure, Quynh Bdap, whose plight encapsulates the Montagnard Dega quest for basic human rights and recognition. The call from Montagnards around the world urging the Thai government not to acquiesce to the Vietnamese Communist Party's demands to repatriate Quynh Bdap is more than a mere diplomatic entreaty. It is a testament to the ongoing strife faced by this community. This essay argues that Thailand, by international legal and moral standards, should not force Quynh Bdap to return to Vietnam, where he and his people have faced threats from the Vietnamese Communist Party for their activism in asking the said party to adhere to United Nations laws regarding indigenous rights and freedoms. The Montagnards, literally mountain people, have traditionally inhabited the highland territories of Vietnam. Dreaming of autonomy and freedom from external control, their pursuit has often placed them at odds with the Vietnamese government. Post the Vietnam War era, the Montagnard Dega have frequently been subjected to religious persecution, loss of ancestral lands, and political repression due to their Christianity and their historical alliance with the United States. Quynh Bdap, as a spokesperson and activist, represents the voice of his people, demanding international standards of human rights be respected by the Vietnamese authorities. Montagnard Dega across the globe are unified in their plea to the Thai government to protect Quynh Bdap from the clutches of a government that has consistently shown antagonism towards their rights. Thai acquiescence to Vietnam's demand paints a bleak picture of a future where forced repatriation could equate to punishment for the simple act of demanding respect for universally recognized rights. The mandate of non-refoulement under the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, asserts that no state shall expel or return a refugee to territories where their life or freedom is threatened on account of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. Quynh Bdap and his fellow Montagnard Dega, fleeing persecution, squarely fall under this mandate. Additionally, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights both underscore the principle that individuals have the right to seek and enjoy asylum from persecution in other countries. By considering the forced return of Quynh Bdap, Thailand risks violating these international legal statutes, which are designed to provide succor to those fleeing from persecution. The role of the Vietnamese Communist Party in indigenous rights violations. The Montagnard Dega's demand for respecting UN law is rooted in the systemic oppression they face under Vietnamese governance. Despite Vietnam being a signatory to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, ICESCR, reports indicate substantial gaps between its international commitments and the actual treatment of indigenous communities, such as the Montagnard Dega. The threats against Quynh Bdap are symptomatic of these broader issues and underscore the legitimacy of his fear upon return. Beyond the confines of legal agreements and diplomatic speak lies the fundamental basis of human morality. Thailand, historically known for its compassionate stance towards the oppressed, is placed at a moral crossroads. To repatriate Quynh Bdap would be to betray their moral responsibility to provide refuge to those seeking shelter from the storm of political persecution. The international community has a vested interest in the observance of human rights standards and the enforcement of international laws designed to protect refugees and asylum seekers. The case of Quynh Bdap resonates beyond the borders of Thailand and Vietnam, representing a litmus test for global commitment to protect the vulnerable. States that are signatories to international human rights covenants have a responsibility to pressure the Thai government to adhere to its humanitarian duties. Opponents of the argument may posit concerns regarding the precedent set by protecting individuals like Quynh Bdap. They may fear that this could invite waves of so-called economic migrants under the guise of asylum. However, this case must be carefully distinguished from economic migration. Quynh Bdap's well-founded fear of persecution, a fundamental criterion separating refugees from other migrants, is supported by documented evidence of the Vietnamese government's treatment of Montagnard Dega activists. Further, some may argue for a diplomatic balancing act, where Thailand must consider its relationship with Vietnam. Yet, this bilateral relationship should not come at the cost of international legal standards and the fundamental rights of an individual facing serious threats to their life and liberty. It is paramount that human rights take precedence over diplomatic convenience. In examining the request of all Diga indigenous Montagnards worldwide, one must delve into the tumultuous history of the Montagnard Diga people, their continuous strife for their rights, and the role of governments in adjudicating complex issues of asylum and international law. Why Quynh Bdap's situation is not merely one of political intrigue, but a clarion call for respect for international covenants and the safeguarding of basic human dignity. The Thai government, in its contemplation of whether or not to heed Vietnam's demand for Quynh Bdap's return, must consider its own reputation as a refuge for the persecuted, its international obligations, and the moral imperatives that transcend borders. Forcing Quynh Bdap to return under the threats he has faced would be a travesty of justice and a flagrant violation of Thailand's commitment to international law. Ultimately, the international community must advocate for Quynh Bdap and his right to freedom from persecution. This case speaks volumes to the respect for human rights and the protection that should be afforded to all individuals, particularly the vulnerable indigenous populations who have long borne the brunt of political motives. Thailand's decision will not only define the fate of one man, but will also reflect the very values that the international legal system seeks to uphold. In defense of Quynh Bdap and the Montagnard Diga people, this decision must align with the principles of justice, compassion, and adherence to the law.